The laughter sliced through the glow of the Christmas lights like shattered glass. Hannah Brooks stood in the doorway of her uncle's house while relatives circled her with questions she couldn't answer. How much was she earning now? When was she going to settle down? What kind of example was she setting? A single mother drifting through life. The air felt thick, almost unbreathable. She stepped outside, reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a wrinkled $50 bill, and held it toward the man standing near the sidewalk. "Pretend you're my boyfriend," she said, "just for tonight." He took the money. She had no idea who he really was. The house had been decorated since Thanksgiving. Uncle Mark believed in Christmas the way other people believed in destiny. Every surface shimmered red, gold, or silver. A 12-foot tree dominated the living room, heavy with ornaments collected over decades. The dining table stretched nearly wall to wall, covered with glazed ham, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, and 3 different pies. It looked like the kind of Christmas people bragged about online, the kind that never showed what happened beneath the surface. Hannah had dropped her daughter Lily at a classmate's house before coming. Lily was 7, old enough to understand tension, old enough to know when adults wished she weren't there. The other mother had smiled too brightly and said it was no trouble. Sleepovers were fun, eating in the morning, and then drove to Uncle Mark's in the morning, then drove to Uncle Mark's alone. She had been living in the converted attic above the garage for 8 months. Mark had offered it after she lost her apartment. Family helps family, he'd said. But help came with expectations. Hannah cleaned the house twice a week. She handled grocery runs. The relatives arrived at 6 sharp. The relatives arrived at 6 sharp. Aunt Diane and her husband Paul, cousin Rebecca and her fiancé Tyler. Everyone married or engaged, everyone working jobs with benefits and retirement plans. They filled the house with noise and wine bottles and laughter that made Hannah feel like she was watching through a window. She tried to stay in the kitchen, offering to chop vegetables, refill drinks, anything to keep her hands busy and her eyes down. But Uncle Mark insisted she join the others in the living room. He placed her on the couch like someone arranging furniture for a photo. The questions started immediately. Rebecca asked about work. Hannah said she was still at the grocery store, stocking shelves during the day, running the register at night. Rebecca made a sympathetic noise that didn't mean sympathy at all. Hannah didn't mention the cleaning shifts downtown that kept her out until nearly midnight. It wouldn't have mattered. Paul asked if she was dating anyone. She said no. Tyler leaned forward and said, "You're still young, Hannah. You could go back to school, meet someone steady, give Lily a real home." The words landed heavy and deliberate. She felt her face burn. She wanted to stand up, but Mark was watching her closely. "Stop trying." Tyler added, "It's just stop trying." Tyler added, "It's just hard on Lily. Kids need stability." Hannah stared at her hands, counted to 10, thought about Lily laughing somewhere else, free of this room, thought about the $32 in her bank account, the shifts she'd have to work after Christmas, the way her manager sighed when she asked for flexibility, thought about all of it, when then Aunt Diane said, "Maybe if you'd made smarter choices." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was agreement. Something cracked inside Hannah's chest. She stood, said she needed air, and walked out before anyone could stop her. The cold hit her like relief. Quiet was better than laughter. That's when she saw him. A man standing near the curb, hands in his coat pockets, breath visible in the December night. Dark jacket, jeans, ordinary. He looked like someone waiting for a ride. She didn't think. She walked toward him, pulled out the crumpled 50, and held it up. need a favor," she said, her voice strange to her own ears. "Pretend you're my boyfriend, just long enough to survive dinner." He studied her for a long moment. His face was hard to read beneath the streetlight. Then he folded the bill once and slipped it into his pocket. "All right," he said calmly. "What's your name?" "Hannah Brooks." "Daniel Hayes." They walked back to the house together, and the absurdity pressed against her ribs, but she didn't turn back. When she opened the door and stepped inside, Daniel at her side, the room fell silent again. This silence felt sharper. Uncle Mark stood first. "Hannah," he said carefully, "who's this?" She straightened her shoulders. "This is Daniel, my boyfriend." The room didn't erupt with warmth. It erupted with interrogation. "Where did you meet? What do you do? How long has this been going on? Why haven't we heard about him?" Daniel answered before she could. "We met a few months ago. She was helping me at the store. We started talking." He glanced at her. "She's easy to talk to." Rebecca laughed. "A grocery store romance. How sweet." Someone asked what Daniel did for work. "Business," he replied. "Nothing more." "Where did he live? Nearby? Did he have children?" "Yes, one daughter." Each answer felt measured, judged. Hannah still felt small, even with someone beside her. Then Rebecca said, "Well, I guess it's fitting. Two people just getting by." Uncomfortable laughter filled the room. Daniel stepped forward, not angry, just steady. "I don't know what your issue is," he said evenly, "but Hannah is worth more than all of you combined." Silence. "She works 2 jobs, raises her daughter alone. She shows up every day and doesn't complain. That matters." He looked at Hannah then, and she's kind. No one had ever defended her like that. Dinner was announced shortly after. People shifted awkwardly toward the table. Hannah stayed where she was for a second, looking at Daniel. Something unspoken passed between them. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. Dinner felt like a second interrogation. Plates were filled, but no one ate much. Questions kept circling Daniel. Which company? What position? How long? "Management," he said. "A few years." Michelle, already halfway through her second glass of wine, asked how much he made. Enough," Daniel replied. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get." The television flickered on when Paul decided to check financial news. The anchor spoke briskly about quarterly earnings. Then a photo appeared on screen. A man in a tailored suit standing in front of a glass building. The caption read, "Daniel Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, Hayes Industrial Group." The room went still. Rebecca leaned forward. "Wait, that's you." Daniel didn't look at the screen. "Oh, yes." The transformation was immediate. Uncle Mark laughed nervously. "I knew I recognized the name." Aunt Diane's tone softened instantly. "Why didn't you say something?" Compliments replaced suspicion. Smiles replaced smirks. Invitations to lunch replaced interrogation. Hannah felt something cold settle inside her. Rebecca said, "You should have told us. We would have been more welcoming." That was the worst part. Daniel stood abruptly. "We're leaving." Protests followed, and dessert wasn't served yet. The night was young. Stay for coffee. He ignored them and held out his hand. Hannah took it. They walked past the tree, past the glittering decorations, past the people who suddenly wished they'd been kinder. Outside, a black sedan waited at the curb. The drive was silent. He didn't head toward the city. He drove toward the coast. They ended up at an empty beach. The parking lot deserted. The ocean dark and endless. Wind cut through her coat as they walked toward the water. Hannah stared at the horizon. And then she broke. Not quiet tears, not controlled, full, shaking sobs that bent her forward in the sand. 8 months of humiliation, of counting pennies, of swallowing comments. Daniel said nothing. He simply stood there. When the tears stopped, she wiped her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have dragged you into that." "You didn't," he said. "I chose to come. They think I'm using you. What they think doesn't matter. It does to me." She shook her head. "You're successful, important. I live in an attic and count change for groceries. Lily deserves better." Daniel crouched beside her. 3 years ago, he said quietly, I was sleeping in my truck. My daughter's mom left. I couldn't afford daycare and rent. I built the company from nothing. The money didn't change who I was. It only changed how people treated me. He looked at her steadily. Tonight proved that. She stared at the waves. I should have done more with my life. You're raising a child alone. That's not nothing. Surviving isn't enough. He was quiet for a moment. What do you need? No one had ever asked her that. She swallowed hard. I need to stop feeling ashamed. I need my own place. I need to stop apologizing for existing. He reached into his coat and handed her a business card. If you want change, call me. Administrative position, benefits, steady pay. No charity, just work. I can't take pity. It's not pity. It's opportunity. She looked at him. Why me? Because someone once did it for me. They drove back in silence. He dropped her at the driveway. Inside the attic room, she stared at Lily's photo on the nightstand. What do you need? The answer was clear. The next morning, she picked Lily up. How would you feel about moving? She asked. Lily's eyes widened. Our own place? Yes. With my own room? Hannah smiled. Yes. They packed everything into boxes and trash bags. Uncle Mark stepped outside as they loaded the last one. You're making a mistake, he warned. Maybe, Hannah said, but it's mine to make. She drove away without looking back. On Monday, she called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. She started 2 weeks later. The job wasn't glamorous. Phones, schedules, paperwork. But it was steady. They rented a small one-bedroom apartment. Lily slept on a pull-out couch, but the door locked, and the lease had Hannah's name on it. Sometimes she thought about that night on the beach, about the $50 gamble, about the moment someone saw her not as a failure, but as capable. She learned something important. The people who change your life aren't always the ones who hand you money. They're the ones who remind you that you were never as small as they made you feel. And sometimes, when all it takes to begin again is one decision made in the cold, under Christmas lights, when you finally decide you deserve more.